A 16-year-old boy lost his life in a way that left the community shaken, and those who witnessed the event were too afraid to speak publicly. Authorities ruled it a tragic accident, despite details that suggested there might be more to the story. Now, more than 30 years later, his family is still searching for clarity, while the same small-town officials seem reluctant to reopen the case. This is the story of Jason Dale Bolton, a teenager whose death on a dark Indiana road remains one of the most disturbing unsolved mysteries in American crime. Laurel, Indiana is the kind of place where life doesn't rush. It's a quiet farming town with fewer than 500 residents, where every street feels familiar and every name carries a history. In a town this small, anonymity simply doesn't exist. Neighbors keep their doors unlocked. Children roam freely on their bikes until dusk, and the same families have lived here for generations. Nothing ever feels out of place, and the pace of life rarely changes. That is, until something happened that no one saw coming. In this quiet corner of rural America, a darkness would descend one summer night that would shatter the illusion of safety and expose the dangerous power of silence. Jason Dale Bolton entered this world on April 15, 1975, born right there in Connorsville Township to a family that would come to know unimaginable grief. By all accounts, Jason was exactly the kind of teenager any parent would be proud to raise. His teachers described him as respectful and engaged. His friends knew him as loyal and trustworthy. His older sister, Tammy Bolton Schmidt, shared a close and loving bond with her younger brother, the kind of sibling relationship built on genuine affection and mutual support. Sure, Jason had experimented with marijuana, like countless teenagers his age, but nothing that raised serious red flags. No violence, no criminal record, no signs of the troubled youth that officials would later try to paint in their reports. Jason was just a regular kid navigating the complicated terrain between childhood and adulthood, making the usual mistakes, learning the usual lessons. He had dreams. He had plans. He had a whole life stretching out before him like an open highway on a clear day. But on the night of August 21, 1991, that highway came to a brutal and mysterious end. That evening began like so many others for teenagers growing up in rural America during the 1990s. Before smartphones and social media, before constant parental surveillance, summer nights meant freedom. And for Jason and his 15-year-old friend, Michael Melvin, that freedom took them to a bonfire party where beer flowed freely and the Indiana summer felt endless. Picture it, flames crackling against the night sky, music playing from someone's car stereo, teenagers laughing and talking and feeling invincible the way only the young can feel. For a few hours, the world was theirs. Around 1 o'clock in the morning, Jason and Michael decided to leave the party. What happened next defies logic, challenges belief, and raises questions that have never been adequately answered. According to Michael Melvin's account to police, an account that would become the foundation of the official narrative, the two friends set off on foot toward the home of Jason's biological father. Let that sink in for a moment. Jason's father, a man Jason barely knew, a man some family members insist Jason had never even met in his entire life, a man whose house Jason would have had no reason to know how to find. So why were two teenage boys walking through the darkness toward a stranger's home in the middle of the night? That question has haunted the Bolton family for over 30 years, and no one has ever provided a satisfactory answer. But the story gets stranger still. Michael claimed that as they walked along County Road 750 South, they simply grew tired. And so, according to his testimony, these two teenagers made a decision that strains all credibility. They laid down on the pavement to rest. Not on the grass beside the road, not under a tree, not at someone's house to ask for help. No, right there on the asphalt, in the middle of a dark country highway, with no streetlights, no reflectors, nothing to warn approaching vehicles of their presence. Two boys, lying flat on a road, in the dead of night. If you're already thinking this makes no sense, you're not alone. Around 3 o'clock in the morning, a vehicle driven by a man named Dwayne A. Grimm came down that dark stretch of highway. Grimm would later tell Indiana State Trooper Todd Fields that he spotted someone lying in the road ahead and swerved left to avoid hitting them. But in doing so, he failed to see the second person lying on the opposite side of the road. His vehicle struck Jason Dale Bolton with devastating, catastrophic force. The coroner's report makes for difficult reading. Jason suffered massive trauma to his groin region from the front left tire, so severe that tissue was completely lost from his body. He was dragged along the rough asphalt surface before the full weight of the vehicle rolled over him, crushing his ribcage and fracturing his skull in multiple locations. Death came from massive internal hemorrhaging and injuries that no human being could possibly survive. Fayette County Coroner Joseph E. Todd examined the remains, reviewed the police report, and delivered his verdict: accidental death. A tragic accident involving teenage drinking and catastrophically poor judgment. Case closed. Investigation complete. Nothing more to see here. The official story was neat, tidy, and wrapped up faster than you can say small-town cover-up. But for the Bolton family, the nightmare was just beginning. Tammy Schmidt would later describe the experience of identifying her little brother's remains as the absolute worst moment of her entire existence. In her own words, spoken with a grief that time has never diminished, "My life stopped the night I identified baby Jason." But what Tammy saw that night wasn't just the heartbreak of a young life cut short. It was something that troubled her on a much deeper level, something that didn't match the official explanation. The image seared into her memory wasn't merely tragic. It was horrific. The condition of Jason's body, particularly his groin area, appeared to have been mutilated far beyond what seemed possible from a simple tire impact. She recalls seeing biological matter and tissue left at the roadside, details so graphic and disturbing they suggest something far more sinister than a vehicular accident. As the days passed and grief began to make room for questions, Tammy and her family started noticing things that didn't add up. Details that should have triggered immediate red flags for any competent investigator. Why would Jason walk toward his biological father's house, a place he'd never visited, to see a man he didn't know? Why did two teenagers supposedly choose to sleep on hard pavement instead of soft grass just feet away? Why was there no physical evidence collected from the scene beyond the most cursory examination? And most importantly, why did investigators never test vehicles from the party for blood or tissue evidence? That last question gnaws at the family to this day, because it represents the most fundamental failure of the investigation. If authorities truly believe this was just an accident, why wouldn't they want to rule out other possibilities? Why wouldn't they examine every vehicle that had been at that party to ensure Jason hadn't been struck earlier and then placed in the road? Unless, of course, they didn't want to know the answers. Rumors began swirling through Laurel almost immediately. Whispers in grocery store aisles. Hushed conversations at the diner. Talk that one of the partygoers was involved in drug dealing. More troubling still, suggestions that this individual had direct familial ties to the county sheriff himself. Whether these rumors held any truth or not, the Bolton family became convinced that these connections explained why the investigation remained shockingly, deliberately superficial. No forensic testing of vehicles. No thorough witness interviews. No follow-up questions about who else attended that bonfire or what might have transpired before Jason left. No curiosity about the holes in Michael Melvin's story. Just a quick ruling and a closed file. But then something happened that would transform the family's suspicions into something approaching certainty. The letters started arriving. Anonymous correspondence reached the Bolton family in the weeks following Jason's death. These weren't sympathy cards expressing condolences. They weren't notes from friends sharing memories. These were accusations. Detailed, specific, horrifying accounts claiming that Jason hadn't died from a random accident at all, but from a calculated and brutal act of violence. According to these anonymous sources, people who claimed to have either witnessed or heard first-hand accounts of what really happened. 4 men at the party had restrained Jason and subjected him to a savage assault. Multiple witnesses allegedly saw what happened, but were too frightened to intervene or report it to authorities. The letters alleged something almost too monstrous to comprehend. That Jason had been castrated while still alive, that his screams had filled the night air, and that he had then been deliberately placed in the roadway and run over to stage an accident that would explain away his horrific injuries. Could such a nightmarish claim possibly be true? Or were these letters the cruel work of someone who wanted to torture a grieving family even further? The Bolton family believes they know the answer. They theorize that Jason may have witnessed something at that party he wasn't supposed to see. A drug transaction, perhaps, or an act of violence that required silencing. The attack, in their view, served as both punishment and warning. Kill the witness. Terrify everyone else into silence. True crime researcher Brian Keith O'Hara examined the case years later and arrived at chilling conclusions. If the anonymous accounts hold even a shred of truth, Jason's suffering would have been impossible to ignore. His cries would have echoed through the quiet Indiana night. Anyone within earshot would have heard him begging for mercy during those final terrible minutes. Yet no one came forward. No one called for help. No one broke ranks. The wall of silence held firm. More than 3 decades have passed since that August night in 1991. 33 years of waiting. 33 years of unanswered questions. 33 years of a family's grief compounded by the knowledge that justice was never even attempted, let alone served. No arrests have ever been made. No grand jury has ever been convened to examine the evidence. No independent investigation has ever been launched. Jason's body has never been exhumed for modern forensic analysis that could potentially confirm or refute the family's worst fears about what happened to him. The case remains exactly where authorities left it in 1991, closed, forgotten, buried under layers of official indifference and small-town secrets. But Tammy Schmidt refuses to let her brother's memory fade into obscurity. Year after year, she continues pressing Indiana authorities for answers. She writes letters. She makes phone calls. She reaches out to cold case units and victim advocacy groups. She shares Jason's story with anyone who will listen. Her plea remains simple and heartbreaking. Please allow your heart and understanding to open up an honest investigation into Jason's death. This is all we ask. Is that really too much to ask? An honest investigation? Basic forensic protocols? Some acknowledgement that a teenage boy's death deserves more than a rubber stamp ruling and a dusty file? Online communities devoted to unsolved cases have rallied around the Bolton family in recent years. Reddit threads overflow with outrage that this case remains dormant. True crime advocates share Jason's story across social media platforms, demanding accountability from agencies that seem perfectly content with the original narrative, no matter how many holes it contains. The questions persist, growing louder with each passing year. If Jason's death truly was just a tragic accident, why does so much evidence point elsewhere? If investigators genuinely believe the official story, why didn't they pursue even the most basic forensic protocols? Why no testing of vehicles? Why no thorough witness statements? Why no curiosity about the glaring inconsistencies? And if witnesses exist who know what really happened that night, people who saw something, heard something, or participated in something, how do they live with themselves? How do they sleep at night, knowing a family has suffered for more than 3 decades while they kept silent? Jason Dale Bolton rests today in Laurel North Cemetery, not far from the town where he grew up and far too close to the road where he died. His headstone marks the spot where a body lies buried. But the truth? That remains hidden somewhere in the darkness of that August night, locked away in the memories of people who chose silence over justice. This case stands as a stark and troubling reminder that justice doesn't always prevail, especially in places where silence runs deeper than conscience, where connections matter more than evidence, and where the power to investigate is held by those who may have every reason not to look too closely. A 16-year-old boy with his whole future ahead of him deserved so much better than a rushed investigation and a cold case file gathering dust in some forgotten storage room. He deserved thorough forensic analysis. He deserved investigators who asked hard questions. He deserved a justice system that cared more about truth than convenience. His family deserves answers. They deserve to know what really happened to Jason in his final hours. They deserve to see everyone involved held accountable. They deserve the closure that only truth can bring. If you have any information about what happened to Jason Dale Bolton on August 21, 1991, the Indiana State Police can be reached at 765-778-2121. Every detail matters, no matter how small it might seem. Every voice counts. Every piece of the puzzle brings us closer to the truth. Your information can be provided anonymously. You don't have to reveal who you are. You just have to find the courage to do what's right, something that should have been done 33 years ago. Jason's story isn't just about one family's grief, though that grief is real and profound and deserving of our compassion. This is about demanding truth when systems fail. It's about refusing to accept easy answers when hard questions go unasked. It's about standing up and saying that some things matter more than keeping secrets. Things like justice and truth, and the life of a 16-year-old boy who never got the chance to become the man he should have been. Until someone steps forward with the courage to speak, until evidence receives the scrutiny it deserves, until authorities decide that this case matters as much as any other, this wound remains open. For Tammy Schmidt, for the entire Bolton family, for everyone who believes that justice shouldn't depend on who you know or where you live. Justice delayed is justice denied. That's what they say. But for Jason Dale Bolton, it's never too late for the truth to emerge from the shadows. It's never too late for someone to find their conscience. It's never too late to do the right thing. Somewhere out there, someone knows what really happened. Someone saw. Someone heard. Someone participated. And that someone has to live every single day knowing they could bring peace to a family that has suffered for more than 3 decades. To that person, I say this: the weight you're carrying doesn't get lighter with time. The only way to put it down is to tell the truth. Jason's family isn't looking for revenge. They're looking for answers. They're looking for justice. They're looking for the chance to finally, after all these years, lay their brother to rest knowing the full truth about what happened to him. You can give them that. You can make that choice today. Because every case deserves to be remembered. Every victim deserves a voice. And every family deserves the truth, no matter how long they have to wait for it. Jason Dale Bolton, 16 years old, gone but never forgotten. His story continues, waiting for its final chapter. The chapter where truth wins, where silence breaks, and where justice, at long last, prevails.